Pastor Jacob, what drew you to be a part of such a biblical series, The Snake?
Yeah, there's a lot of snake illusions in scripture, not all of them bad. So this process started when I lived near Los Angeles and I saw an ad that they were testing a new reality show and they were going to bring people in for a couple of days. And so I thought that seemed really intriguing because they were looking for a pastor, didn't hear back. 8 months later, casting agency contacts me and says they're casting for the actual show. Would I be interested in interviewing for that? And at first, it was just kind of a silly thought experiment. Never have I imagined going on an actual reality television show. And so I thought it would be fun to just chat with people and see where it led. And the ball just kept rolling. And I didn't think that it would be possible to leave my wife, who's also my co pastor, and
Oh,
my church. And I have a 3 year old. And so the logistics of it didn't seem like it would be feasible. But
you're off to Argentina for weeks at a time.
off to Argentina, yeah. And as it was going on, I just kept thinking about the wider implications of it. They were looking for a pastor. How often do you see a pastor on a reality television show being a pastor? And so for me, it was an opportunity to put out there to the world that we see a lot of images in American Christianity of judgmental, hypocritical, hateful forms of religion. And so I really wanted to have a chance to say, you know what? The Christian faith can be used to make the world a better place, that it doesn't have to be hateful, that there are people out there who are loving. And so I didn't want there to be a pastor cast on this show that maybe was anti gay or anti immigrant, which
Mm.
is the reality for a lot of pastors in the United States. And so I wanted to showcase what a more loving, inclusive Christianity looked like. And so I said yes, and then jumped out of the crate and into the snake layer.
Is there a strategy you had going into this? And is there a possibility for a pastor to have a strategy? Maybe you were hoping they would be more like your flock and you could sort of put them under your wing and maybe convince them that the halo was real.
I think that may have been the initial strategy that was not the reality very quickly. I had no idea what to expect going into it. None of us knew anything about what was going to happen. So when we popped out of those crates, I was hoping to be able to use sort of a more loving, positive approach, and at the same time play the game and be competitive, and not knowing that there was going to be as much deceit and manipulation as there was, but was hoping to kind of use that positivity. But kind of met some initial resistance and distrust, and so that was something that I had to take into consideration. That definitely affected me emotionally and made me try to come up with a new strategy.
Well, you initially made a lot of enemies on the the second episode when you were
Yeah.
trying to push Jack a little suspicion onto him. Were you really trying to confuse everyone by saying maybe he was spitting in the bucket, or did you really think you had caught him?
I didn't know exactly what would happen in the midst of that competition. Jack and I were the ones who were eating it the quickest, and I had a quarter of an egg left on my plate. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw that there was a bucket behind us that was full of egg. And so I knew that I hadn't spit it out. Rules of the game, if you spit it out, you either had to eat that or get new food. And so in my head, this was less about, trying to be honest and keep the game filled with integrity. More so, I was just in a competitive moment thinking I was about to win this and get the snake medallion. And so I knew that I had less egg in my hand than there was in that bucket. So I thought I was on the verge of winning. And when Jack was declared the winner, I was really confused. And that's when I turned around and realized that it wasn't Jack's bucket, it was my bucket. And someone had spit in it. And so that's kind of why I was really agitated. And they came over and checked what was going on and realized that something had happened. Someone spit in my bucket. It wasn't me, but they couldn't verify who it was. And so round two. And in that moment, I knew, like, oh man, this is bad. Like, this is definitely putting a target on
Some
my back.
regrets at that moment? You thinking some regrets?
Oh, the second it came out of my mouth, I was regretting it. I didn't realize it was going to be that bad. That everyone was going to want to take me out of the house immediately. I thought that there would be an opportunity to kind of smooth things over. So uh, in round two, it would have helped to have won round two, but Jack won
You
that one
think?
fair and square. Yeah. Jack won that one fair and square, and so was week two. Very grateful for Detective Derek. He was my saving grace in that episode.
Well, knowing that you had all this heat on you, did you try to start to strategize for how you could alleviate some of that focus on you going into the next, at least, episode?
Yeah, at that point, I was just trying to have more conversations with folks and was hoping that they would kind of see me for who I am and that would change their opinions about me. I think that definitely worked for some people, not others. And I think, in episode three, when I'm trying to make this larger new pact with Jack and Devante, behind the scenes, they're talking to each other, not realizing why their enemy would be working with them. But at that point, I didn't know I was their enemy. And so I was a little naive about that.
Even Jack, you didn't think you had made Jack an enemy after accusing him of eating and spitting in
Huh, you know what? Maybe I should have thought a little harder
hindsight
about
2020.
that.
Well,
Yeah.
I guess you thought his good nature, he is a very good-natured person and like he seemed very easygoing, so you thought maybe he had put it away and I'm speaking for you at this point, but in my opinion, I
Yeah.
felt like maybe you thought
Yeah.
that he had put it away and that, he knew it was just a game and you were both literally eating disgusting eggs and at that point you just didn't want you were doing your best not to have to eat anymore.
Sure. Yeah, that is what I thought, and everyone liked Jack at that point. And so I was trying to work with Mac, and she really liked Jack as well. And so I thought that maybe this could be a strategy that would work for everyone. And episode three is definitely the point where, looking back, I would have absolutely changed my approach or changed my strategy because it was an opportunity to use the snake medallion to make a power move. Instead, I was trying to be Pastor Jacob and bring everyone together and we can come up with a new happy plan. But uh, again, a little naive on that front.
Well, going into episode 4, you seek some counsel from Frankie. What was it about him that made you feel comfortable enough to try to get his opinion and sort of counsel you on
Yeah.
how to move forward?
Yeah. I had a really big emotional disconnect between episode three, episode four, to where I really wanted to be there as a lot of these folks had some religious trauma, some distrust of clergy.
Mhm.
And so it became much more than just a competition for me. Even though these people were my competitors for the grand prize, I also wanted them to leave having had an experience up close with a clergy person that they could trust and see cared about them. And so trying to compete and send people home, and I'm glad that you're close with Brian. He's a really great guy. I didn't want Brian to go home episode three. That wasn't my goal. And so it was my bad strategy that led to his being there in the beginning. And so that really really threw me for a loop. And so Frankie was kind of the social hub of the house. Everyone liked Frankie, just a great demeanor, and he also had a really kind soul. And so I, for me, I called him Pastor Frankie. And so even though I was the one there as a pastor, he was my pastor and gave me really good counsel, really good advice, and just was a really grounding space for me.
Somebody said, Frankie should write a book because, he was, like he does say, these wonderful things. And he was saying, people do seek out their hairstylist and they talk to you about, those things that maybe you you don't feel comfortable talking about with other people when you're in the chair. And he had a lot of the female cast members in his chair. So
Oh,
sure.
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, well, what did you think when Alyssa became the snake by
Yeah.
plate alone?
I know. I thought that was a really good twist, and the pleasure I got out of that moment was seeing the bros squirm because they didn't get a chance to do some sort of challenge. And what I love about the competitions that we're all seeing is I think a lot of people went into it thinking it was going to be really physical, but there was always a social component to it as well because this is about a social experiment. And so the fact that it was random, And I don't know. I think that Alyssa just kind of had this intuition. I think, the dinner party was her place where she was comfortable, and everyone had something that they brought from their profession or their personality. And so to see her kind of comfortable in that moment at the dinner party and to get that random plate, I thought was a really cool twist. And for me personally, I was excited about it because I was genuinely having really nice conversations with Frankie and Alyssa. I know that they didn't fully trust me, but I really trusted them. And so I thought, this is great. This is a good opportunity for me to keep going in this game. Alyssa told me personally, you're not going home. And so I was feeling really good in that moment until I realized, like, oh, wait a minute, this chain is going to get to Catherine. And I don't think Catherine's necessarily on my side. So that's where going into the saving ceremony on the fourth week, I realized, depending on Alyssa is probably okay for me. Depending on Catherine, not so much.
Well, we're getting to that. Putting her
Yeah.
on the spot, I thought about her secret alliance was incredible because she didn't expect it, but it also caused quite a backlash about her being outed as having this pact. Were you surprised at how much everyone blew up at one another over this?
Yeah, now knowing how much Catherine had a strategy coming into it and was playing the game, and that the bros were just her tools, it gives me a little bit of a satisfaction knowing how much they were angry and storming in and coming to her defense, thinking that she was this, quiet
Damsel in distress.
quiet little damsel in distress, and these bros were gonna come to save her. So despite the fact that I really wanted to still be there, I wanted to keep going. I wanted to win just as much as everybody else. I think I'm gonna get a little bit of satisfaction knowing that she had them fooled just as much as she got everybody else. So it did blow up on me, and I was just trying to kind of, you know, respond to it with my non-anxious pastoral presence when they storm into the room to confront me. But yeah, clearly it didn't go over as well as I thought. I thought it would be an opportunity for us to all say like, "Oh yeah, we've all heard conflicting, contradictory stuff from Catherine. It's pretty obvious that she's playing all the sides, and we can't trust her." So that's what I thought would happen with this group chat. That it would just be kind of a moment for us to all say like, "Oh yeah, this isn't adding up."
When I didn't even expect that. I mean, as someone who is fully aware of Catherine's manipulative behavior as a fan of watching the show, I I did not expect them to come to her defense in such a cutthroat manner to the point where Frankie was like, "No, no, we need to dissipate because um,
Yeah,
as much as a pastor as you are, I felt like there was too much testosterone coming at you all at once, and I applaud Frankie for dissipating that, but yeah, I was kind of worried that not for your
yeah,
safety, but I was just worried that this would all blow up immediately and they'd be like, you're going home immediately, no question. Like every single person would be against you. And I was worried that that had twisted too many minds at that point
yeah,
into throwing
yeah.
you out. But watching back, I'm sure you talked a little bit about this actually. I'm sure you've seen Catherine's large list of strategy for her time on the show. What were your thoughts seeing how manipulative she was actually from before it even began?
Yeah, you know what? As I'm processing this live, watching it alongside everyone else, I think for me, even though the deception did me in, I have to respect that she came in with a strategy and was ready to play the game. And I kind of respect that a little bit more than just kind of the blunt testosterone approach. And
Hmm.
she was there to play, and so you can't fault her for that. It's a game. She was ready to play the game.
You took yourself out of the game in the end. Were you hoping this would inspire them to say, no, 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 you can't do that. You have to stay. We're going to vote and you're get Christine out and you're just going to stay. No, you can't take yourself out. Or were you just really throwing yourself on the fire for the sake of everything because you'd had enough of all of the twisting of your morals maybe and maybe twisting of your heart a little as well?
Yeah, in that moment, I I just didn't want it to be me and Derek in the bottom, and that was kind of the idea behind um, confronting Catherine. Because if Derek and I had ended up in the bottom, I didn't want to see Derek go home. I really respected him. I really appreciated his strategy. Him and I related to the fact that we were both established professionals. We have families. And so if it had been anyone else in the bottom with me, I would have fought to stay. And I had some arguments prepared. I would have made my case. I wanted to be there. I just needed more time to help everyone else see the truth of what was going on. But when it was me and Derek there in the bottom, I knew that the lies had encircled me so much that going back into the house, I didn't have as good of a chance to change the course of events as Derek did. And so I thought, if anyone's going to get back in there and keep fighting and change the trajectory, which seemed very much oriented towards the bros and towards Catherine, then it was going to be Derek. And so that was kind of my time to say, you know what? I came here to share a loving, inclusive message of what Christianity can look like. Hopefully, I've done that amidst the drama. It's time for Derek to keep doing his thing.
Okay, so looking back, was there something someone said that maybe was most shocking to you or still stings a bit for you? Maybe Catherine saying, joking or not, that you were going to burn?
You know what? So, uh, being a progressive pastor, I think that line is just super funny because I personally don't even believe in a literal hell. I think that if there's a loving God who created the universe and this God wants to invite all people into an eternal place of peace and rest, then I think that that God can do that for all people. So that line is just really amusing to me, and not so much hurtful. Uh, she definitely had it out for me in that moment when I was trying to bring to light some of the lies she was telling. Um, I think for me, I just um, was sad that people were so distrustful of me right away. And I've had some time to reflect on it and kind of realize, it's probably a good thing. I think people should be a little bit more wary of clergy. When people give their blind trust to clergy, it leads them into spiritual abuse or manipulation or religious trauma. And so it's really good for people to be thinking for themselves and ask questions and push back. And so I've had some time to kind of think, what, that's actually a good thing for society to not just give their blind trust to a clergy person. And I'm really grateful for the more pastoral conversations that I was able to have on the show, to be able to have that really special moment with Alyssa and to say on national television, what, God loves all people, no exceptions. I think that those special moments outweigh the traumatic ones.
Who have you kept in touch with from the show then?
Yeah, the whole cast is on a group chat together, and so there's conversations between everyone. It's fun to kind of see the tension that arises when an episode airs and people see like, "Whoa, okay, didn't know you said that about me," or "Didn't know you had that strategy." Um, but I'm still chatting strategy with Derek. He was definitely my closest pack mate, and so it's fun to debrief the episodes with him and think about what could have gone differently.
Do you have any regrets or any burned bridges from your time on the show?
Uh, the only regrets I have are my own decisions. I wish I can see a reality where I was still myself. I was still the honest, truthful, loving pastor, but more strategic. And so I wish I hadn't let that deep, burning desire to be a good pastor occlude my rational strategic thought, because I think I could have held both of those in tension a little better. So no regrets of what other people said or did, just my own decisions.
What's next for you? Any more thoughts on competing on reality shows?
Ah,
Are you mostly focusing on what's next for you in the church and maybe
yeah.
contemplating how to get that another baby?
I know. Yeah, that's
That was
absolutely
heartbreaking
what's at
for
the
him.
forefront. So thanks for asking about that. That's really sweet. My wife and I are starting another IVF cycle here in
Mhm.
a couple days, actually. So we've got a doctor's consultation today, and that's definitely at the forefront of our personal lives. And for me, this wasn't something I was searching out or seeking reality television. If it fell in my lap again, I'm always up for an adventure or a challenge. And at the same time, I love what I do. I love being a pastor. And so being able to be here at my church and provide a safe refuge for folks, that's the main focus of my life.